Hey guys, just a spoiler warning, this dish hasn't been shown in the anime yet, so if you don't want to know what it is or you don't want to get a general idea of how it's made, don't watch this video. You've been warned, so if you decide to watch this anyway, don't whinge in the comments to me afterwards. Today we're making Eggs Benedictine fit for a queen. This is the very last dish that Yukihiro Soma cooked in the Blue Arc in the manga and features the following elements: a Japanese style hollandaise sauce flavoured with soy sauce and yuzu, some form of fried pork, rice that has been mixed through with pieces of kombu and shiso leaf, and the crown jewel, a tempura poached egg. Let's get to it. Orders up, service please. To start off today's recipe, we're making rice. We've covered this in the past. Use whatever method of cooking rice you want to make at least 2 portions of white rice. I'm going to be using my rice cooker because it's the easiest method for me. Once you've weighed out your rice, make sure to wash it out 2 to 3 times or until the water you're using to wash the rice looks relatively clear, like so. I shouldn't have to remind you to wash your rice in 2020, but this year has been especially rough for rice recipes. Wouldn't you agree, Uncle Roger? I filled up the pot with water to the appropriate level, and just before we set this into the rice cooker, we're also going to add in 5 grams of kombu to infuse a little bit of that flavour into the rice. Now we're going to set this pot into the rice cooker and let it do its thing while we make some poached eggs. For our poached eggs, we've got a medium saucepan filled with water to 2/3 full. Next we're adding in 1 tablespoon of white wine vinegar into the water and giving that a quick stir and letting that sit over medium heat until it's almost simmering. When the water is getting steamy and you can see the bubbles are starting to form in your pan but it's not quite simmering yet, we can start poaching our eggs. Start by stirring your water in a circular motion until there's a strong vortex spinning in the center of your saucepan. Then we're gently pouring in a cracked egg into the center of that vortex and letting the momentum of the water spin the egg into the shape that we need. Once our eggs are in, we're dropping the heat to low and letting them poach for about 6 to 7 minutes or until the whites are fully set but the yolk is still nice and runny. Now, full honesty here guys, I poach eggs maybe once or twice a year, if that. But since these guys are being battered in tempura anyway, we don't need these poached eggs to look perfect. As you can see, the first one I poached looks more like a mini sunny side up egg. The second and third ones look alright, but they could be improved as well. Either way, once your eggs are cooked, place them onto a paper towel lined plate to dry and set them to one side for later use. Next up, we're making the Japanese style hollandaise sauce, which involves flavouring the sauce with yuzu and soy sauce. Now if you're in a position like me where you can't find yuzu, you can just use lemon juice instead. It just won't taste exactly the same as yuzu has a very distinct flavour of its own. Now because I can't find yuzu, I thought it'd be fun to try and make a substitute using lemon, orange and lime. Now to get more citrus flavour into the sauce later, I'm going to zest about a teaspoon's worth of the rind from each of our citrus before placing the zest to one side. Then I juiced the orange, lemon and lime and kept the juices in separate ramekins in preparation for making our yuzu substitute. I started testing for the substitute first with a combination of 1 part each lemon, lime and orange juice. This starting ratio was way off and was overpoweringly sour. A bit more fiddling with the ratios later and I eventually settled on a combination of 1 part lime to 2 parts lemon to 3 parts orange. The result was that it tasted good and obviously citrusy, but does it taste like yuzu? No. So some could argue this was completely pointless and it'd be easier to just use lemon juice, but hey, just remember that a big part of cooking is about experimenting and sometimes failing as well. Alright, so now let's actually make some hollandaise sauce. Into a small saucepan over medium-low heat, we're melting down 150 grams of unsalted butter. During the same time, we've got a medium saucepan filled with a couple cups of water that has just been brought to the simmer over a medium heat. Place a heat-proof bowl over the simmering water, ensuring that the water isn't touching the base of the bowl, and then to that bowl, we're adding in 2 large egg yolks and 2 teaspoons or 10 ml of our yuzu juice substitute. Whisk that together over the simmering water until it's fully combined and it starts to look a little bit paler and creamy. By this time, your butter should be fully melted and we can begin to slowly and steadily pour the melted butter into the egg yolks while constantly whisking. Take care to do this slowly, as adding in too much butter at once can cause your sauce to split or scramble your eggs due to the rapid increase in heat. Once all the butter is added in, we're going to continue to whisk and cook the sauce for another couple of minutes or until the sauce is thickened and it can hold its shape on the back of a spoon like so. At that point, we're adding in 1 teaspoon of our combined orange, lime and lemon zest and seasoning to taste with soy sauce. I used just under 2 teaspoons or 10 ml for this much sauce, and then I felt like there wasn't enough citrus flavour coming through, so I added in another teaspoon of our yuzu juice substitute. Now if you don't need to use the sauce immediately, it's best to keep it in a thermos or other heat retaining container to keep it warm. I'm pouring the sauce into this little thermos tumbler before placing it into my rice cooker to keep it nice and toasty. Next up, let's talk about the pork. In the manga, it just says that the dish has fried pork. Since this hasn't been animated yet, I don't know if they mean pan fried, deep fried, or whatever, so today I'm going with tonkatsu. I've covered how to make this in depth in my Katsudon video, which you can check out by clicking the eye in the top right corner, so I'm just going to breeze through the instructions here. Coat your pork of choice in flour and egg 2 times to make a protective layer for the meat juices, and then we're going to thoroughly pack on some panko breadcrumbs before setting the tonkatsu onto a plate. Repeat this with as many pieces of pork as you need, and then we can move on to frying. In a high-walled frying pan, I've got about a centimeter's worth of vegetable oil that's heating up over medium-high heat. You can test the heat of the oil by dropping in 1 piece of panko breadcrumb, and if it starts to bubble immediately, you should be ready to go. Carefully lay the tonkatsu away from you into the oil and then cook them for about 4 minutes per side or until they're a lovely golden brown. Do keep in mind though that the cooking time will depend on how thick your pieces of pork are. I've got real thick boys today, which is why I'm using 4 minutes per side. If you've got something thinner, adjust it accordingly. When our tonkatsu is looking beautiful and golden, we're going to transfer them into a wire basket and lean them upright to minimize any residual oil from pooling and making our tonkatsu soggy. These guys are then getting placed into an oven preheated to 90 degrees to keep nice and warm. With the hollandaise sauce and the tonkatsu done, we can now shift our focus back to our eggs. The star of this dish is the tempura egg, so obviously we need to make a tempura batter. Into a bowl, we're sifting in half a cup or 125 grams of cake or all-purpose flour to remove any lumps. We're also sifting in 1.5 teaspoons or 5 grams of corn flour. Next, we're adding in half a cup of ice cold water and mixing that with the flour until it becomes one smooth paste. If you find that the batter is a bit too thick, just mix in more water a couple teaspoons at a time until you have a smooth fluid batter that is just a little bit thicker than water. Moving over to the stove, we've got some vegetable oil in a saucepan that is being heated to 180 degrees Celsius. If you don't have a candy thermometer or another method to gauge your oil temp, just drop a few bits of your batter into the oil and see how it reacts. If your oil is hot enough, the batter should react pretty quickly and float towards the surface, but it shouldn't brown too quickly. Either way, when you think your oil is up to temp, you're going to gently place one of your poached eggs into the tempura batter and thoroughly coat all of the sides of the egg with that batter. Then we're gently placing the egg into the oil and letting that go for 2 to 3 minutes or until it's light golden in color. Once the batter has set around the eggs and it's just starting to turn a light blonde color, I'm going to pull the eggs out and drain them on some paper towel and set them to one side. Going back to our rice, it was noted in the manga that the rice had both kombu and shiso stirred through it. Much like yuzu, shiso leaves aren't exactly an easy thing to come by where I live. After a bit of research on Google, I found that Thai basil can be used as a substitute for shiso, although much like yuzu, nothing quite tastes like shiso either, so feel free to substitute it with whatever you want or what you can find. Either way, to prep our rice additions, I'm first going to roll up a few leaves of the Thai basil into a little cigar before finally slicing it into little ribbons like this. Then for the kombu, I've just taken out one slice from my rice cooker and we're going to cut that into thin strips before finally dicing it and setting that to one side along with our sliced Thai basil until we're ready to assemble. Last thing to prep before we start assembling our eggs benedict on is to slice our tonkatsu, but first, let's take a moment to enjoy how crispy it sounds. Ah, beautiful. Now, using the sharpest knife that you have, you're going to gently saw back and forth until the knife breaks through the top layer of the coating, and then you're going to cut through the rest of the pork in one quick and confident motion. Repeat this sawing and cutting motion until the tonkatsu is fully sliced, then set it to one side within arm's reach because we're finally ready to assemble our donburi. Okay, so let's put this bad boy together. Into a bowl of white rice, we're going to add in the chopped up kombu and Thai basil that was prepared earlier and mix that in thoroughly together with the rice. Next, we're covering the rice in a beautiful, golden, crunchy tonkatsu blanket. Follow that up by placing one of the tempura eggs into the middle of the tonkatsu. Then we're going to glaze over that beautiful egg with our rich Japanese style hollandaise sauce, and make sure to spoon some of that sauce over the pork as well because this stuff tastes incredible. Lastly, to finish things off, we're sprinkling over some finely sliced garlic chives because I didn't realize I'd run out of spring onions at home. And there you have the anime kitchen version of eggs benedict on, fit for a queen. Now before we start eating this, let's just see how that egg turned out. Alright guys, this is Soma's final dish in the series. I've got really high hopes for it, so let's see how it turned out. And I've got to say, this dish is fantastic. It's unapologetically filled to the brim with carbs, but my god, it's delicious. You've got that beautifully tender and juicy pork surrounded by a crispy, crunchy panko exterior. The tempura poached egg does lose a bit of the crispiness from being glazed with the hollandaise sauce, but the egg whites inside are still firm and very silky, while the egg yolk is creamy and rich. The addition of the kombu in the rice provides a nice snappy texture to the dish, while the Thai basil provides a wonderful aroma and flavour. Finally, you've got that Japanese hollandaise sauce. It's tangy, citrusy, and the umami flavour of the soy sauce comes through really well, and by pouring it over the hot tonkatsu and white rice, it begins to melt and mingle with every part of the bowl. While I may not have been able to get a hold of all of the ingredients to make this 100% accurate to the manga, I think we did a great job of capturing the overall idea and execution of this recipe with the ingredients that were available to us. However, if any of you guys do live in Adelaide and you know where to get yuzu and shiso leaves, please let me know so I can revisit this recipe. As always my friends, thanks so much for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please let me know by dropping a like down below. Let me know in the comments what food from anime and other media you'd like to see me make in the future. Subscribe to the channel for a new episode every single week. And until then, pull up a chair, unfurl that napkin, and I'll see you in the anime kitchen. Cheers.